It's day one and we're up the river as advertised last week. We're doing really good finding schools, and we're seeing even bigger fish in these schools, but these are the ones we're getting. What we're doing is sitting on them and figuring them out. That's been the thing that's worked so far. We're going to move around a little bit more, but these ended up coming on a jerkbait after we threw just about everything else in the box at them. So anyway, if you're coming up the river, look for some of these shallow spots. Now, we're not getting them in deep areas, getting up on shallow flats. Right now, we're on a sandy flat, which has been working great, but been working from fronts of these islands. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, but there's plenty of these left here in the St. Clair River, and more to come as the summer progresses. The goal was to explore the deep bite in the St. Clair River system, so we launched at the North Channel DNR launch near Algonac. It's no mystery that the 20 to 25 foot range in the river is loading up with numbers of smallmouth, but something happened on the way to executing the plan. Ken and I stopped at the first spot, the flat at the head of Russell Island. This is a known spot to hit at first light, and it didn't disappoint. Ken connects in his first few casts with this one. As I was netting it, you could see a bigger smallie following it up to the boat. Ken was casting towards this new feature on the flat, a whole tree, root system and all. We didn't catch or see any smallies directly on the tree, but it is a welcome piece of structure anyway. Our experience here turned out to be our experience everywhere, but we didn't know that yet. Further up the river, we hit a couple of seawalls on the U.S. side that are usually highly productive. That didn't work out. We also hit Fawn Island. Let me give you the whole story about what we found. We fished the front flat. The water is still very clear, but beginning to turn a beautiful algae green. No fish were caught or seen. We fished down the U.S. facing side without success. Ran the underwater camera down the ATB wreck side and saw only drum and suckers, but we did find some nice smallies on the northeast corner. Here's where the story goes from work to fun. We went further upstream, and as we looked over the shallow, sandy flats on the Canadian side, there were smallies all around the boat. Ken gets a reaction strike after his plastic hit the water, but the bass came off. We threw the tackle box at them and finally solved it. They started chasing and taking the jerkbait. It had to be pulled upstream though. Here's my analysis of the bass fishing on the St. Clair River and its channels. There are plenty of bass available, but the most active schools are on the Canadian shore of the river where there are sand flats. I would only use this strategy over the weekend if I had spots located in advance. On day 2, I took off from Harley Ensign and found good numbers of smallmouth in post-spawn holding areas, flats, and edges of flats. On day 2, I felt the job today was to check the post-spawn bite out in the lake, specifically tied to the St. Clair River channels. And there definitely is a post-spawn feed going on. It's gotten started. There's still some tentative bass out here. Like I was throwing the jerkbait, I was throwing the channels yesterday, and these fish were just coming up and looking at it, but I saw a lot of fish here out in the lake, just off the channel system. So this is a post-spawn feed for sure. There's a lot of fish here, but what I had to do is I had to switch gears. I had to start going low and slow. They weren't so wild about the tube on the bottom, but I threw a drop shot, and that's how I got them. But I'm talking about very, very slow. I'm throwing behind the boat, and I'm just slowly bringing it back, and that seems to be the ticket today, at least here in this area. We're going to move on closer to the South Channel, but right now by the North Channel, the Snai, action's pretty good. I did find a school of the biggest smallies I've seen all season. They were on a flat of cabbage beds related to the coal piles. If they won't come up from 15 feet or so to hit topwater or subsurface baits, the technical challenge will be to work baits on the bottom through the tall but sparse cabbage. Once I got out of the cabbage and out onto the open flat, I didn't see a thing. Seawalls at the end of the channel system are starting to hold quality smallmouth, but I wouldn't expect any one seawall to be enough for you to get a limit of winners. Here's where you can find out more about how to get the most out of flats fishing on Lake St. Clair. In my book, No Secrets on Lake St. Clair, Volume 3, I've written possibly the most important chapter I've ever written in any book, St. Clair Flats. Now, flats can be fairly easy to identify, but not all flats are the same. And in this chapter, I talk about what a flat is made up of, but also how the bass position themselves on the flats. This can reduce the amount of time you spend in an area and can increase your catch rate. Bass are just about everywhere in the lake and river system. Here is a rundown of what should work out best this weekend. Lake St. Clair South Shore. There's a large concentration of smallmouth bass here. You can isolate the bite by depth. Fishing pressure here is irrelevant. Most likely, you'll need to call to get your best limit. The coal piles and connected flats. Here, I found a school of the largest smallies I've seen this season. There's a high degree of difficulty fishing the tall but sparse cabbage. You'll get less bites, but you should get bigger smallies per bite. The mile road's deep, and we're talking about 13, 15 feet, oh, maybe more. Here, advanced electronics will give you an edge. Post-spawn staging bass at the St. Clair River channel outflows. Here, there are great numbers and size, lots of fishing pressure, though, on known spots. St. Clair River and channels. Winning bass available, spots are tight, and culling up to a winning weight is likely. Now, we didn't go there, but never count out the Horseshoe, the Stakes, or Mitchell's Bay. Sorry we didn't get to all the deep fish I was hoping for. They're down there because those deep fish are feeding these shallow flats, but we ended up spending the whole day in the river on shallow flats doing this. Sorry, couldn't help it. It's a lot of fun. You can come up St. Clair River, but make sure you get here early and leave early also, because it gets a little crazy out here on the weekend. God bless. Good fishing.